Rain lashed against the windows of a quiet suburban home in Ohio. Inside, chaos reigned. David paced the living room, his voice cutting through the thunder. 4 daughters, Emily, 4, and not one son to carry my name. Emily stood by the dining table, holding their youngest, Lily, close. Their children, David, our children. They need their father, not his disappointment. David slammed his fist against the wall. I've worked my whole life for this family, but what do I get? For girls who'll leave one day to take another man's name. I needed a son and heir. The 3 older girls, Sarah, Mia, and Hannah, watched from the hallway, tears pooling in their eyes. Sarah, barely 12, took her sister's hands. It's okay, she whispered. Mum won't let him hurt us. Emily's voice broke. You think a son would make you more of a man? Real men protect their families, not destroy them. David's face twisted with rage. Get out, all of you. Emily froze. What did you just say? I said, get out, he shouted, throwing open the door. The rain poured in, soaking the carpet. If you can't give me a son, then I don't need you or your girls. Lily began to cry, her tiny voice trembling. Daddy, please. Don't be mad. I'll be good. David turned away, jaw tight. Go. Emily's tears mixed with the rain as she gathered what little she could, some clothes, an old photo album, a few toys, and guided her daughters outside. The thunder roared above them as she looked back one last time at the house they once called home. Goodbye, David, she whispered. The door slammed shut behind them. They walked down the dark street, drenched and shivering. Sarah tried to be strong, though her lips trembled. Mom, where are we going? Somewhere safe, Emily replied softly, forcing a smile she didn't feel. We'll start over. I promise. That night, they found shelter in a rundown roadside motel. The flickering neon sign outside buzzed with the word vacancy, while inside, Emily tucked her girls into a single creaky bed. She wrapped her arms around all 4 of them like a human shield against the world. Listen to me, she whispered. We may have nothing right now, no house, no money, no father, but we have each other, and that's more than enough. Sarah looked up at her, eyes wide and full of quiet strength. We'll make it, Mum. I'll help you. I promise. Emily brushed her cheek gently. You already are, sweetheart. As the girls drifted to sleep, Emily sat by the window, watching the rain ease into a steady drizzle. Her heart ached, but somewhere deep inside, a flicker of determination burned. She wouldn't let her daughters grow up believing they were less because of their gender. She would raise them to be strong, smart, and the kind of people who would prove the world wrong. Outside, the storm passed. Inside, 5 hearts clung to one another in the dim glow of a motel lamp. Emily closed her eyes and whispered to the night, one day, they'll see. One day, my girls will rise. 15 years passed, but the memory of that stormy night never left Emily's heart. Life had not been kind, but she had refused to let bitterness consume her. Through long hours, double shifts, and endless sacrifices, she built a life for her 4 daughters, a life born not from privilege, but from courage. They lived in a modest 2-bedroom apartment above a bakery in Cleveland. The mornings always smelled of fresh bread, and though the walls were thin and the space small, laughter filled every corner. Sarah, now 27, had become a nurse. Mia, 24, was finishing law school. Hannah, 21, studied architecture, while the youngest, Lily, now 15, still dreamed of becoming a doctor, like the ones who once treated her mother when she collapsed from exhaustion. Years ago, Emily woke early every morning, preparing breakfast before her daughters left. She watched them move around the small kitchen, the chatter, the teasing, the clinking of dishes, and her chest swelled with pride. You girls have turned out more wonderful than I ever imagined, she said. Her voice warmed up. Sarah smiled, handing her a cup of coffee. Because you never gave up on us, Mum. They sat together, and for a fleeting moment, everything felt perfect. But beneath that peace lingered a ghost, David, the man who once threw them away. None of the girls had seen him since. To them, he was just a shadow from a painful past. One evening, as Emily returned home from her job at the nursing home, She passed by the city billboard and froze. There, in bold letters, was a familiar name. David Harper, Harper Constructions, building the future. His confident face stared back at her, older but unmistakable. Her hands trembled. He was still here. Still successful. Still proud. That night, she sat in silence while her daughters discussed their day. The laughter faded when Sarah noticed her mother's expression. "Mum, what's wrong?" Emily forced a small smile. "Nothing, sweetheart. Just tired." But Sarah saw through it. She always did. Later that night, she found the billboard photo tucked into her mother's purse. "That's him, isn't it?" Emily hesitated, then nodded. "Yes, your father." Mia frowned. "After everything he did, he still gets to be rich and respected." Emily sighed. "Don't waste your anger on him. We didn't survive for revenge, girls. We survived to live." Yet the next few days, Sarah couldn't stop thinking about it. The man who cast them out had everything, while her mother still worked herself to the bone. It didn't feel fair. But Emily's grace stopped her from hating him. Instead, she turned her energy into purpose, volunteering at the community clinic, helping single mothers rebuild their lives. A week later, an old neighbor from their childhood called Mrs. Jenkins. Her voice, thin and raspy, said, "Emily, dear, I thought you should know. David's company's in trouble. His new wife left him. The man's lost half his fortune." Emily's heart ached, not from satisfaction, but from a strange, quiet sorrow. "Thank you for letting me know," she said softly. That night, she prayed not for revenge, but for peace. Meanwhile, Sarah and Mia sat in their small living room, talking quietly. "Maybe he deserves what's happening," Mia said bitterly. "He threw us away like trash." Sarah looked down at her hands. "Maybe, but what if we're supposed to show him something different?" Mia frowned. "Like what? Like who we became?" The conversation hung between them. The four girls, shaped by pain and love, had grown into women of strength. They didn't need to prove their worth, but deep down, Sarah felt that one day, fate would bring them face to face with the man who once broke their world apart. Weeks turned into months. Emily's health began to waver. Long hours had taken their toll. One evening, she fainted at the clinic. Sarah rushed her to the hospital, panic coursing through her veins. The doctor reassured them it was exhaustion, nothing more, but it was a wake-up call. "We need to take better care of you," Sarah said, holding her hand. Emily smiled weakly. "I'll be fine, I just wish your father could see what beautiful women you've all become." Mia's jaw clenched. "He doesn't deserve to." "Maybe not," Emily whispered. "But forgiveness isn't about what they deserve. It's about freeing yourself." Those words stayed with Sarah. A few months later, a charity gala was organized to raise funds for underprivileged families, an event sponsored by none other than Harper Constructions. Sarah's hospital had been invited to provide medical support. When she saw the invitation, her chest tightened. It was fate. That evening, she stood before her mother holding the letter. "Mum, David Harper is hosting this event. Maybe we should go." Emily hesitated. "After all these years, what good would that do?" Sarah's eyes glistened. "Maybe it's time he saw what he threw away." Emily looked at her daughters for beautiful, strong women standing before her. They were everything she had ever dreamed of. Maybe this was the moment to face the past, not with hate, but with grace. She took a deep breath. "All right," she said finally, "let's show him what real strength looks like." The sisters exchanged a knowing glance. They weren't going to seek revenge. They were going to walk into that gala proud, radiant, and united, in that quiet living room. Under the hum of a single bulb, the family that once walked out into the rain 15 years ago now stood tall, ready to walk back into the light. What none of them knew was that the man who once threw them away was now drowning, his business failing, his friends abandoning him, his pride shattered. And in a twist of fate, the same daughters he had once cast aside were about to become the very people who would save him. The night of the charity gala arrived with a chill in the air and lights glittering across the Cleveland skyline. The event was held in a towering glass ballroom overlooking the city. Elegant guests, luxury cars, and flashes from camera phones painted the evening in shades of gold and envy. David Harper stood near the bar, trying to mask the exhaustion behind his forced smile. His once thriving construction empire had nearly collapsed. Investors were pulling out, partners had left, and his second wife, Vanessa, had filed for divorce months earlier, taking most of what he owned. His suit was still sharp, but his eyes had lost the spark of pride. He greeted guests mechanically, accepting handshakes and fake smiles. "Glad you could make it," he muttered. Two men who whispered about his downfall the moment they turned away. Meanwhile, at the entrance, Emily arrived with her daughters. Heads turned the moment they stepped into the room, for graceful, confident women in elegant dresses, each carrying herself with quiet power. Sarah led the way, her nurse's ID badge pinned discreetly under her coat. She was officially there as part of the medical staff, but tonight was more than duty. It was destiny. David looked up mid-conversation and froze. His glass slipped slightly in his hand. The world seemed to stop around him. There she was, Emily, and beside her, four women who bore his eyes, his features, and his blood. For a brief, dizzy moment, David couldn't breathe. The crowd blurred. The music faded. All he saw was the family he had thrown away. Emily met his gaze. Her expression wasn't angry. It was calm, almost sorrowful. That hurt more than hatred ever could. He cleared his throat and excused himself from the group, walking toward them with unsure steps. "Emily," he began, voice hoarse. "Is it really you?" She smiled faintly. "It's been a long time, David." His eyes flickered to the women beside her. "These are our girls." Sarah crossed her arms, her voice steady but sharp. "Your daughters. The ones you didn't want." David's throat tightened. He looked at each of them, Mia, Hannah, Lily, each one strong and radiant in her own way. The weight of regret hit him like a tidal wave. "Sarah," he said softly, "you've grown." She met his eyes without flinching. "We all did. Without you." There was silence between them. Guests nearby began to notice the tension. Whispers spread the fallen businessman and the family he had abandoned. David tried to gather himself. "Emily, can we talk privately?" Emily glanced around the glittering room. "After everything you did, there's nothing private left between us." "David," he lowered his voice. "Please, I've made mistakes. I was young, proud, foolish, cruel," Mia interrupted coldly. "You were cruel." Her words struck like a blade. Emily gently placed a hand on her daughter's arm. "Mia," she turned to David. "What is it you want to say?" He exhaled shakily. "I lost everything, Emily. My company's collapsing. Vanessa left me. I don't even have anyone to turn to." Sarah looked at him, disbelief flickering in her eyes. "You threw away your family for a son you never had. And now, you're alone." He nodded, shame filling his voice. "I know. I've spent every night wishing I could take it back." The crowd's attention shifted to the stage, where the host announced the next segment, a surprise donation from a group of anonymous sponsors supporting single mothers. Emily and her daughters stepped forward when called. David blinked in shock as Sarah approached the microphone. 15 years ago, a mother and her 4 daughters were abandoned because they weren't born male. She began, her voice steady but filled with emotion. The audience fell silent, but instead of breaking, that mother taught her daughters to build a life, a purpose, and compassion for others. She looked straight at David as she continued, "Tonight, we're donating $50,000 to support single mothers so no woman ever has to choose between love and dignity." The audience erupted in applause. Cameras flashed. David's face turned pale as realization dawned. His daughters were successful, independent, and kind. Everything he had wanted a son to be, they had become. When the applause faded, he stepped toward them, voice trembling. "I don't deserve forgiveness, but I'm proud of you. All of you." Emily's eyes softened slightly. "David, we didn't come here for revenge. We came to show you what love can grow into, even when you abandon it." He swallowed hard, tears forming in his eyes. Can you ever forgive me? The girls exchanged glances. Finally, Sarah spoke quietly. Forgiveness isn't about you, Dad. It's about freeing ourselves. And we already have. A tear rolled down David's cheek. For the first time in years, he felt small, but also human. As the night drew on, the family stayed a little longer. Emily and her daughters mingled with guests, inspiring others with their story. David watched from a distance, feeling both regret and awe. The music swelled. Sarah danced with Lily, laughing. Emily smiled at her daughters, her legacy, and David, for the first time, realized that he hadn't lost them because of fate. He lost them because of his own blindness. As the lights dimmed and the gala came to a close, Emily approached him one last time. "Take care of yourself, David," she said softly. "We wish you peace." He nodded, unable to speak, his eyes following them as they walked away, the wife and daughters he had once thrown into the rain. Now glowing under the golden chandeliers, walking toward a future brighter than anything he had ever built, and for the first time, he whispered the words he should have said 15 years ago. "I'm sorry." Weeks passed after the gala, but the echoes of that night haunted David Harper. His mind replayed every word, every glance, every tear he had seen in his daughter's eyes. The applause that once fed his pride now felt like judgment. His once grand office stood half empty. Framed awards gathered dust, and eviction notices sat unopened on his desk. The man who had once believed he needed a son to complete his legacy now had no family, no fortune, only silence. One grey morning, David sat alone on a park bench, clutching a wrinkled newspaper that featured a headline about the charity event. Mother and 4 daughters raised record funds for single mothers. Beneath the photo was Emily's warm smile, surrounded by her daughters. The image broke him and healed him all at once. He looked up as the wind rustled through the trees, whispering like an old ghost. "God," he murmured, voice cracking, "if I could go back, I'd trade every brick I ever laid for just one more day with them." A hand gently rested on his shoulder. He turned. Dan froze. Sarah stood there, wearing her hospital scrubs, her expression calm but kind. "Dad," she said softly. His throat tightened. "Sarah, what are you doing here? I take this route after my shift. I saw you sitting here." He looked down, ashamed. "I don't expect forgiveness. I don't deserve it." She sat beside him. "You're right. You don't. But you're still my father. And I don't want hate to be the last thing between us." Tears welled in his eyes. "You sound just like your mother." Sarah smiled faintly. "That's the best compliment you could give me." They sat in silence for a long while. Birds chirped. The world moved around them, unaware of the quiet reconciliation blooming on that bench. Finally, Sarah stood. "Mum's been thinking of you. She won't admit it, but she's worried. You should come by sometime." David blinked in disbelief. "She'd let me." "Maybe not at first," Sarah said with a small laugh, "but she's not the woman you left. She's stronger now, and she taught us to show compassion, even when it's hard." He nodded, his heart heavy but hopeful. "Tell her, I'm grateful for raising you all into the kind of women I was too blind to see." "I'll tell her," Sarah said. "But maybe you should tell her yourself." She walked away, leaving him staring after her. For the first time in years, David felt the faint pulse of purpose return to his chest. A few days later, David found himself standing outside the familiar little apartment above the bakery. His palms were sweaty, his heart pounding. He raised his hand to knock, but the door opened before he could dot. Emily stood there, apron dusted with flour, her eyes widening in surprise. "David," he swallowed hard. "I didn't know where else to go." For a long moment, neither spoke. Then, Emily stepped aside. "Come in." Inside, the house smelled of coffee and cinnamon rolls. Photos lined the wall: birthdays, graduations, laughter. A family he had missed growing up. Lily, now taller and confident, peeked out from the kitchen. Mum, whose she stopped mid-sentence. Dad. He nodded slowly. "Hey kiddo." Her lips trembled. Then she ran forward, hugging him tightly. David froze, then held her back, tears spilling freely. I'm so sorry, Lily. I'm sorry for everything. Emily watched quietly, her eyes glistening. We've built a good life, David. It wasn't easy, but maybe it's time to let the past rest. I don't want forgiveness, he said softly. Just a chance to be near you, to see the people I threw away become the people I should have been proud of. Emily nodded, her expression softening. Then start by being the man they needed all along. No grand gestures. Just be there. Over the next few months, David kept his promise. He showed up. He helped at the bakery, fixed things around the apartment, and attended every family dinner invitation, even if he stayed quiet most of the time. He didn't ask for love. He earned respect, and slowly the walls began to fall. Hannah started teasing him like old times. Mia asked for advice on real estate. Sarah occasionally joined him for coffee before work, and Emily she no longer looked at him with pain, but with quiet understanding. One evening, as they all sat around the dinner table, Lily looked at her father and said, "You know, Dad, we never needed a brother. We had each other." David smiled, tears brimming again. "And I never needed a son. I just needed to open my eyes." Laughter filled the room. The weight of years began to lift. The family he once lost had become his redemption. Later that night, after everyone went to bed, David stood by the window, looking out over the glowing city. Emily joined him, leaning quietly against the frame. "You did good tonight," she said softly. He chuckled. "Didn't burn dinner this time, huh?" She smiled. "Maybe there's hope for you yet." David turned to her, his voice low. "Emily, thank you for giving me a second chance to see the family I never deserved." She looked at him for a long moment. "People change, David. Pain teaches us what pride never could." Outside, the moon hung high, casting a gentle glow over the little apartment. Inside, warmth replaced the years of coldness that once defined them. The next morning, as the sun rose, David slipped a note onto the kitchen table before heading out for work at a small construction site. The note read, "Family isn't built with bricks and wood. It's built with love and forgiveness. Thank you for teaching me both." Emily found it later and smiled, tears in her eyes. She looked at her daughters, all grown and thriving, and whispered, "Kindness always finds its way back." And somewhere in the distance, under the rising sun, David Harper walked with quiet peace, no longer a man chasing a legacy, but one finally living it.